Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff, Mosher, and Adam Caplan here for another episode of Inside the Birds. We're going to get into a lot of different topics in this episode. First, want to wish happiness and healthiness to everybody, all of our listeners. We appreciate you all. Hope everybody's safe and healthy. So we're going to answer questions that were asked to us through our Facebook message board. That community is growing. Make sure you get in on that, the Inside the Birds Facebook community. And also from our Apple platform for those who gave us a 5-star rating or review and asked a question there. So we'll get into a bunch of things, but we've also got some nuggets to start off with about the Eagles and the return to play and the OTAs and things like that. Before we get into that, Adam, I just want to remind people that our latest ITB TV episode is out. No guest this time. It's you and me going through part 2 of our fantasy football projection. You know, in part 1, we talked about Wentz and Miles Sanders. So part 2 we just dropped this week, and that talks more about the wide receivers, the tight ends, and the defense from a fantasy football perspective. But I will say, and I think you admit, we also get into scheme and strategy. It's not strictly numbers. I think it's really a comprehensive look at the playmakers there.
Yeah, we gave you a statistical projection, kind of where you would draft them. And then the Miles Sanders stuff, you can hear our first show because they're all on YouTube. Everything we do is pretty much either in podcast form or YouTube form. And on YouTube, you can find all of our ITB TV segments where you and I, on this one, we break down Jalen Reagor and Geoff. You had some good intel about how he's going to be used and what we've been hearing. And the tough one is on Dallas Goedert. He is the biggest challenge for the Eagles fantasy players. I think I've got Reagor pretty well nailed down in terms of what his role is going to be and how much he could get in terms of catches and targets. But Goddard is a tough call, and Geoff and I break that down, I think, pretty thoroughly. But when you have Zach Ertz there, you're not going to get every target.
Right. That was a fun – I enjoyed doing that, and we'll continue to do that as the summer progresses. Reminder, all of our ITB radio segments, our Football at 4 segments on 97.3 ESPN in South Jersey can be accessed on our YouTube page. So if you want everything, go to YouTube. Please become a subscriber. You'll get notified as soon as we post our content, and you'll be able to get right to it. Our last Inside the Birds, we did a breakdown of the defensive coaching staff. That was our last podcast. We talked about strengths, weaknesses, tendencies. The podcast before, we did the offensive staff. So if you missed those, people have been telling us that they were very enlightening podcasts as far as understanding more about the position coaches on both offense and defense, and kind of a soup to nuts look at all the people who are in charge of coaching the players. And there were a lot of coaching changes. So we encourage you to check those out if you missed them, and also encourage you to go to the website, insidethebirds.com. Adam has put up a recent mailbag there, so he's answered more questions. Andrew DeCecco and I have continued to put content up there, different kinds of stories. So make sure you check it out, insidethebirds.com. All right. I want to get into this before we do questions because we have some kind of new pertinent information. Adam, a lot of people have asked us because of the phased reopenings of different states, what does this mean for OTAs? If there's reopenings going on, and now that sports teams are allowed to open in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, doesn't it make sense, we're constantly asked, that the Eagles would maybe try to get everybody in for at least 1 or 2 rounds of OTAs before they start training camp in July? We've looked into this, and what I can tell you, and Adam, I've shared this with you, is that from what I've been told, it's my understanding there is a 0% chance that you'll see Eagles players or even coaches at the NovaCare Complex this in June. It's despite the reopening, there is still obviously safety concerns. If you think about it, Adam, and we can just talk about this from using our senses level. This is when your rosters are at their biggest times in the spring. You have 80 players. You have a bunch of coaches, 90 players. I'm sorry. You have, over about 20 to 30 different coaches between the position coaches, the assistants, and all the new ideas guys they brought in. It's not easy, even with reopening, to have all these guys coming from different areas in one complex and be able to keep everybody guaranteed to be COVID-free.
Sure. This is a brand new world, Geoff. The players were never going to be practicing. That was never going to happen. But I find it interesting because talking to coaches with other teams, my impression was they thought, and I'm talking to a bunch of coaches from both conferences, and seemed to me that they thought they'd be returning, but by the end of June for 1 to 2 weeks so they could just get into their offices and get some work done. They never thought that they'd get the players back on practicing. It was basically they were hoping for a Hail Mary, just maybe to get a handful of guys, but it was never going to happen. Plus, with the equity rule, which we clearly explained a couple shows ago, so that is interesting that the coaches won't be able to come in. So, Geoff, here's the question though, and no one can really answer it. Yeah, everyone thinks they're going to open up in July, but they don't know that. And I know we got some questions from our listeners from the message board. I just don't know how this training camp is going to go. No one really seems to have an answer. How quickly they're going to get things going. Let's say it does open in late July. You hit the ground running. I guess what they'll do is they'll take everything they got from the online sessions and just kind of bring it together. It's going to be an interesting way to get camp started. It's much like the lockout in 2011, 9 years ago.
Yeah. There's two levels to that. There's what can you accomplish in a short amount of time because you didn't have OTAs, where normally during OTAs, you've got new draft picks, rookie free agents, and free agents, newcomers to your team, and along with coaches, and you get that acclimation out of the way so that you know what training camp is like. Doug hits the ground running. It's time. I mean, he's starting to be in regular season preparation mode from day one of spring training. Usually it's day 4 or 5 that they put the pads on and get serious. Yeah. And then after the second preseason game, they actually start to do more install and start to prepare for the season and the division teams. I don't think that Doug's going to be able to move that fast once spring. He's almost going to have to treat the first 2 weeks of spring training a little bit like OTAs. He probably will have to, slow down the concepts and slow down the install and make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, because look, with Jalen Reagor, the first time he's going to get on the field, it's going to be late July. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he'll have the online sessions, but to test out what he learned from the playbook and the online teaching, he's going to be doing it immediately. Mm-hmm. That's a lot, man. This is look. I know that 9 years ago, teams went through this, and I know talking to some executives who were working coaches back then. The first 3 weeks of training camp were very difficult. The first 3 weeks of August were very difficult. In late July, because if you remember, they were coming in a lockout without the playbooks. They weren't allowed to do anything, so they didn't even know rookies unless the teams cheated. And I'd reported I was working for Fox Sports then, that one AFC team actually gave their playbooks. They weren't supposed to do that during the lockout. But anyway, to move this forward, yeah, it's going to be challenging. There's no doubt. Look, you hope for the best. We got a lot of questions on this, by the way, on the message board, and they're very fair. There's really no way to know. There's no way to know, because if a guy learns really well and you think he knows what he's doing, well, that's fine, but that's not on the field. Right. Not on grass, as Doug Peterson said.
And by the way, before that can even take place, right, you have to get the entire team to Philadelphia from all different parts of the country, and the coaches too. And we just talked about that's over 100 to 200 people, and you have to make sure that they're all healthy.
I was going to ask you about that.
It's my understanding that they're going to have everybody be not tested prior to training camp, but they also will probably have to have players quarantined together for a certain amount of time, maybe like a week or two, before they can even start practicing, because they need to know that there's nobody who's carrying COVID with them. So there's going to have to be a lot of pre-planning about the COVID before they can even get on the field to start their practicing. And it sounds, from what I was told, this is important too. I know Jeffrey Lurie is very serious about this and wants to make sure guys are tested on a regular basis.
He cares about his players. I can tell you this much about Jeffrey. He really does care about his players. And it's one of the things that players will tell you, that generally from a team atmosphere point, it's really good. And if you talk to players who have come from other organizations, they feel like they're really treated well. The front office staff has been treated well by Jeffrey. Yeah, and plus, here's the other thing, because I'm talking to my friends who work in the NBA. The temperatures are being taken by the players. The NBA has let like a limited amount of players able to work out in their team complex, and they're getting their temperatures taken. Now, I don't know if they're doing it every day, every 2 days. I don't know that, but I know that's something that's going to have to be a part of this. This is a brave new world, man. That's it's very important to be safe, and we wish everyone out there that's going to go through this. It's not just the NFL and all the sports. It's like when you go back to work, whenever you stop doing it over the internet or whatever, how you're doing it, you're going to have to go back, and you got to make sure everyone else is safe. You got to be careful. You're going to have to wear masks and everything.
Right. And I also would be, I think we should look out for see what kind of changes. I wouldn't be surprised if there are changes made at the NovaCare Complex where the meeting rooms are to make them bigger,
Spread it out.
rearrange them
Yeah.
to be able to
Yeah.
keep distance.
Yep.
There's a lot of work, I'm told, that is going into the planning to make sure, because I think people think that once things start, they're a little bit back to normal. No, they're going to be very different. As you mentioned, it's going to be a new world, even when the players get back, and we'll have to see what steps they continue to take. And normally the first 2 weeks of Camp Adam is when you see the entire front office there. You'll see the scouts there. They haven't yet been deployed out to the colleges. The business people are milling around. It's very unlikely you're going to see them there too. I think you're going to see only the people who need to be there during training camp.
Yeah, and I know the scouts love
coming in to see the rookies. That's too bad. That's too bad. But look, you got to be safe, and this is a brave new world. We've never been through like this, anything like this in our lives, and we're going to have to adjust and treat everyone well. You're not just wearing a cover to protect yourself. You're trying to not give someone else sickness. So don't forget about that.
All right, we've got a lot of questions to get to, and we're going to try something new, and might be more lasting. We're going to have our producer, Hunter Brody, ask us the questions, Adam, so that, I don't have to lob it to you or vice versa. We can both weigh in on a question. So look forward to that. Hunter will ask the questions. But before we get into that, got to tell you about our friends from DraftKings. Make sure you're downloading the DraftKings Sportsbook Casino and app right now. I'm sorry, the DraftKings Sportsbook and Casino app now, and use the promo code ITB to play risk-free for up to $200 of casino games for your first 24 hours. That's promo code ITB to play risk-free up to $200 for your first 24 hours of casino play on DraftKings Sportsbook and Casino. You got to be 21 or older, Pennsylvania only, partnership with Hollywood Casino and Penn National Racecourse. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let us get into the answering of the questions.
All right,
shall we, Hunter?
We will start.
Mr. Brody.
How's it going, fellas?
Good to talk to you, Mr. Brody.
Oh, yeah. We're going to start with Ian Koska. And he says, how does the organization feel about JJ Arcega-Whiteside? Given his skill set coming into last year's draft, he would seemingly be a good complement to the rest of the receiving core. Does this team think his struggles last season were a fluke due to injuries?
Yes. Ian, to answer your question, yes. They think part of it was the downtime because he was nervous. He had a foot injury. I believe it was turf toe. I need to double check that. I know it was a foot injury, and I know it really limited him. And if it's turf toe, yeah. By the way, that's what Davante Adams had. Remember, Davante Adams, who just destroyed the Eagles, Geoff, if you recall.
Oh, I remember.
That's the game he had 180 yards and he had turf toe and it was limited for almost the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you could run with that. It's like it was either turf toe or plantar fascia. I don't remember, and I'm going to find out. It was one of the two of them, and he just couldn't run. And yeah, so Ian, to answer your question, he needs to be a factor. They expect him to be a factor on the outside. And Geoff, without Alshon Jeffrey, I got to think this guy is going to have a chance to contribute this season.
Yeah, I think so, Adam. I think the important distinction we can make between JJ and, say, the other receivers on the team is that I think we at least know what his role will be if he can rise to the occasion and play well. He is an X-receiver. He is a physical receiver. He is not a speed receiver. And clearly, if the Eagles want to make Jalen Reagor a move kind of player where he's on the outside in certain formations, in the slot in the others, maybe as a ball carrier in others, well, then you're going to need somebody else to play that X when Jalen's not there. We know Alshon Jeffrey is going to just most likely be hurt for the start of the season. We know Deshaun Jackson is strictly a Z. So JJ possesses, ideally, theoretically, the ability to beat the press coverage because he can use his hands. He's a strong physical guy, but he has to be reliable and he has to catch the ball. Those are two things he was not doing well enough by any stretch of the means last year. But as to go back, they really do need an X receiver, and they don't know yet what they're going to have in Jalen Reagor, and the lack of spring camps is going to hurt. So it would be very beneficial for them to see that development in Arcega-Whiteside to know that they've got someone at the X that they can play across from Deshaun Jackson at the Z.
Right. So in base, because they're going to be 12 personnel in base. That's what they're going to run this year. It's going to be Rager and Jackson, and obviously the 2 tight ends. When they go 3 wide, Ward will either be the slot or they'll move Rager to the slot, and obviously JJ will be on the outside with D-Jack. So, and then they have an opportunity as a sort of a change up. Marquise Goodwin, you can move. He's a Z. He could back up to Sean. So there's a lot of versatility. I'm glad you asked this question, Ian, because there's so much versatility now to this offense. And God forbid Alshon shows up early in the season. Can you imagine if Alshon could play? Not that guy could run, but he's 30 years old. But, man, if he could play by weeks 3 or 4, you really might have something interesting here. They got all the speed to burn, but then you give someone who's physical like Alshon and JJ, they got a lot of versatility to this offense.
I'm laughing because I like how you said, God forbid Alshon shows up as if it was a terrible
no, but what I meant is...
I know what you're saying, though.
What I meant is because everyone's writing him off. Like, I said on our show 6 weeks ago that he's going to be on the team this season. It's not quite I wrote about this in our mailbag, but I don't have a timeline yet. I don't even know that he's running. I'm going to find out within the next couple of days whether he's running or not, or whatever his role, whatever he's doing now. I just like to know, do they need to leave? He'll start training camp on PUP, but is there a chance that they won't have him on PUP to start the season, which is reserve PUP? Because if not, then you could start going. He'll be week to week, and maybe he comes back by weeks 3 to 5. We'll see.
That would be a hell of a recovery, by the way, because what we initially heard was that the injury was kind of as bad as the one that Jalen Mills suffered.
It is 12 months. It is, but Jalen Mills and Jeffrey. Jalen Mills is. I don't know. His took longer. I don't know what happened. I don't know. It's been so long, Geoff. I don't know if he had a setback during it. He kind of denied some stuff that we had heard. Right. But with Alshon, anything they could get him out of him is a plus because he has ability, man. He goes and attacks the football. They don't have anyone like that on the roster right now.
All right, on to the next one.
All right, this is from Kyle Maloney. If the organization truly doesn't believe Andre Dillard is ready to play this year, wouldn't re-signing Jason Peters have been a priority from the start?
Geoff, you can take that.
I mean, Adam, we've talked about this. They can't really know until they see. They can hypothesize, they can theorize, but until you get Andre Dillard on the field and get a really good look at the body, what he's done in the offseason on his own, and how he has done mentally and even physically in year 2, then you can't really make that decision on whether or not you have the utmost faith in him or not. But I think what we're seeing here as we get into June now and training camp in July is that nobody else has signed Jason Peters, Adam. So maybe he's the guy who's a phone call away after a week or 2 at camp, and either there's an injury or a concern about your left tackle situation.
Yeah, I would add this, Kyle,
that I really do believe that had they had an off season, they would have had obviously the May OTAs, because you have the rookie camp first. He's not a rookie, so he couldn't participate in that. But you have the May OTAs, the June OTAs, and the mandatory camp. And by the way, look where we are right now. We're already in June. They would have had 20 plus practices to evaluate whether Dillard's ready. Now, the big thing, don't forget, go to folks, if you haven't watched it yet, our ITB TV with Trey Thomas. He does an unbelievable job of breaking down Dillard. It was just phenomenal. You could go to his Jason's YouTube page. I mean, Trey's YouTube page. You could see the video part of it, but we also did an interview with him. We go back and forth, and he explains the issues with Dillard. It's not so much functional strength. Sure, he has to get stronger, but his hands are the real issue. And they, Geoff, they would know by now whether his hands are better. But now, because he's not there, they don't know.
Right.
So that's where it's at.
You're just going to have to see up close when training camp finally does begin.
All right. From David Lubkin, which rookie and which second-year player will have the biggest role and impact this season?
Go ahead, Adam. You give yours first.
Rookie is Rager.
There's no doubt about it. He's starting. They don't have, with Jeffrey's injury, and JJ is a question mark. I think a Whiteside in terms of what he could just do, because they haven't seen it yet. And with Jackson's injury history, this kid's got to play, and they need him to produce, and he's going to get a really good shot. So I would say in terms of rookies, and then Geoff, second year players, anyone you could think of?
No, and to make your point on rookies, almost by default, it has to be Rager, right? Because I mean, Jalen Hurts, even if he's ahead of the curve, is only going to be used in a sporadic gadget kind of role. He's probably not going to be the backup quarterback this year. So Davion Taylor, the third round pick, has been called a project. I mean, I can't see it being anybody other than Jalen Rager. As far as second year player, I mean, we just talked about Andre Dillard. He's got a chance to step in there, seize the left tackle role, and kind of go from there and start to, set his own legacy there.
Yeah, the big one though is Miles Sanders.
Second year player. You're right on Dillard. He does. That's a huge one. But Miles Sanders, just based on the way the Eagles are thinking, the way they've explained to me privately, they think he's so special. Here's what you need to know about Miles Sanders. And I've shot down a lot of the BS that's out there about there's no committee here. Doug Peterson says one thing because he just the media should be smart enough because most of the local media guys have been around with Doug from day one. They know he says things that he doesn't always mean.
Right.
You're given running backs. Last year's situation, there was a committee because Miles won the starting job, surprisingly, in training camp, and he lost it in week 2 against Atlanta. They drafted him to be the guy without being in a committee. A committee is when you just keep rotating 3 guys, and it's kind of divided, in the middle. There's no committee here. Trust me. Anyone who wants to make me a bet, please let me know because there will not be a committee this season. Nobody who works for the Eagles. But Doug does not really believe that. He just said it because he sort of placates the media. Oh, yeah, I've always had a committee. I love the committee. Right. Yeah, you loved it because this is the guys you were given.
Yeah.
Miles wasn't ready last season. I rarely question what Doug says. I know some people think he's not truthful. Well, if you graded the truthful coaches of the National Football League, he's probably one of the most truthful, and he's not always truthful. He just says things sometimes. I don't know that he believes it. Miles Sanders didn't share in the football, period, end of story.
All right, I think that's a perfect segue for our next question, and I'm very interested in this one because I might have had a controversial take on Twitter over this past week that got Eagles Twitter going crazy. So, what is the view around the league of Doug Peterson? Does he get credit for getting in the playoffs with injury-plagued teams the last 2 years, or is the Super Bowl win now seen as a lightning in a bottle and 9-7 is who he is? If they have another season like the last 2, is Doug or Howie on the hot seat?
I think, Adam, you and I, we give Doug his proper due. I think the things we are critical of, we don't hide it. We talk about it, whether it's coaching your coaches or the run game kind of predictability. But when you step back in macro instead of micro, you look at everything the Eagles have accomplished since he's been the head coach, including that rookie year, by the way, when they were 7-9 or 6-10 with very, very little wide receiver talent. I mean, and a rookie quarterback. He keeps the team together. I think he's a very good play caller. I actually think nationally he's not rated high. It seems like Sean McVay always gets more props as a head coach than Doug, and yet head-to-head, Doug beats him every time, and Doug's won a Super Bowl, and Doug has accomplished more.
Remember when I gave?
I guess it was within the last couple of shows, maybe in the when we broke down the offensive staff. I gave my little top 10 head coaches. Doug's a top 5 to top 7 head coach. He's terrific. Mm-hmm. What the reason why he's not going to be a top 3 coach, and I started this last fall. For those of you who are new, listen to our show recently. One thing that really bothered me, because I had some pretty good intel on it, he's just not good at coaching his coaches. He just needs to be better with it. It really is an issue. It's what holds them back. He needs to, and I've said this a couple times, you can't let this get to the ownership level. When the owner has to get involved in the coaches, you're not doing your job as a head coach. You're just failing. You never let it. And by the way, you need to protect your coaches. If you're meeting with the owner regularly and the owner has a problem with your coaches, you better start coaching your coaches harder. Mm-hmm. And you better know what the hell they're doing and not doing. And you have to, from a macro level, what aren't we doing on offense? Well, it's obvious. The owner wanted more creativity. So they brought a bunch of idea guys in, which is the term that someone from the Eagles gave me. Okay, great. Don't let this happen again. This is what separates Doug from being a very good head coach from being a great head coach. He's pretty damn good. I'll be the first to admit I completely missed on the guy. I didn't see it at all. No one did. The Eagles could say what they want, but Jeff.
I stuck up for him after his rookie year, his first year.
Did you?
Because I felt like there were things that people were intentionally ignoring just to be able to jump on the train of slamming him because he was kind of an oh gosh guy in the press conference. But right. That was a horrific set of offensive weapons that he had in 2016 outside of Zach Ertz, who was very good, and then Carson as a rookie who won his first 3 games and showed promise. I don't know if people remember this, but I think the Eagles that year finished either 1 or 2 in time of possession with that terrible set of wide receivers and the running back carousel that of guys always getting hurt. Ryan Matthews was hurt for most of the year.
Oh, yeah.
He still had an offense that went up and down the field as well as any team in the National Football League. I knew after year 1 that he was a good offensive play caller. I did have questions about his leadership. I mean, there were a lot of different things he would say. You know, the whole Josh Huff incident, you remember, happened. It looked bad. He's loving on him one day, then releasing him the next, just like you said. Very inconsistent with his messaging at times. But by year 2, you win the Super Bowl, and then you come back the next year, and you have all these injuries. You get back to the playoffs. I don't know what more. He's accomplished more in 4 years than Andy Reid did in Andy Reid's first 4 years coaching the Eagles. So I don't know how you can think he's on any other trajectory than being one of the best coaches in the league.
He's open to new ideas. We've really not talked about this before. Before we move on, I do want to mention a couple things. And I want to highlight your point about some of the garbage that he had to work with, Doug, in year 1. This is when Dorial Green Beckham, your guy, DGB, who you've outlined on our show many times, the immortal Bryce Treggs, who's out of the league, the immortal Paul
who couldn't play at that point,
right? Who got benched? Jordan Matthews, who was hurt with an ankle injury.
Mm-hmm.
The coaches were not happy when he wouldn't play through it, but he had a legitimate injury.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, might have been a knee injury. It was either ankle or knee. I don't remember now.
Right.
And Mr. Training Camp, Paul Turner, who people got pissed off at me on Twitter. I had to block some people. I said the guy can't play. He can't run.
Mm-hmm.
Great guy, great story. Can't run. Well, he's out of the league. So. You're right, Geoff. You nailed it. They had no help. This is the way they ended the season with those 5 receivers. And Howie got the picture, had to help them. But I will tell you, talking to the Eagles privately, they had no idea how good their team was in 17. They knew they were going to be better. Maybe could challenge for a wild card. They had no idea what was coming. It was just really remarkable.
Shocked the world.
Yep.
Many years after Isaac Sopoaga predicted it.
Did he say that?
Don't you remember? That was like Chip Kelly's first signing, right? It was
Isaac
Sopoaga, and he said, "We're going to shock the world." And the most shocking thing about the statement was that it came from Isaac Sopoaga. I mean, people barely knew who the guy was.
97, yeah, he came from the Niners. Yeah, Sopoaga. Yeah, no. Funny thing is, no one can pronounce his name, but I'm a stickler for pronouncing names correctly. Once in a while, I get them wrong. I butcher it, but it's one that no one's told me. Sopoaga. Sopoga. Like people can never get it right.
Yeah.
So I would always email Derek Boyd, go, hey, Derek, could you tell me how to pronounce this guy's name? Anyway.
That was great. Go ahead, Hunter.
What's next, Hunter?
All right. Alex Rowe wants to know, how much will the lack of OTAs and condensed training camps hit the Eagles in the back end? The secondary lost their quarterback and have lots of new moving pieces.
So this is a good question, Adam. And let's attack this on 2 levels. One, because we've already talked about it a little bit. Let's figure out where you think it's going to hurt the Eagles most, and then compare that to other teams in the division, right? The goal is to win the division. So where do you think the Eagles are hurt most by the lack of OTAs?
I would say, well, it's a tough call. I would say the receivers, obviously, not getting on the field is a major issue. That's probably the biggest one. Now, the question is a really good one about the secondary. Coaches tell me the biggest issue with the secondary is communication when you're changing schemes or changing teams, because you haven't gotten on the field and getting your timing together. And then let's throw this in: Jalen Mills, position change, new nickel corner, Nicole Roby-Coleman,
Right.
Gary Slay, new to the team, not new to the scheme. He played for Jim Schwartz for 1 year in 2013. And then Will Parks, new player.
Sure.
Kayvon Wallace.
Right.
You're right. New player. So there are a lot. This is a great question. We need to look into this more. But the biggest one, Geoff, to me is receiver. They just have Goodwin's new to the team. JJ Arcega-Whiteside needed time on the field. John Hightower, he was a rookie. Dillard, obviously not getting those reps. Rager's a major one.
Yeah.
That's it, man. I mean, Miles getting those reps as the number 1 back, just getting a feel for what the offense, the changes in offense. And obviously, by the way, Carson Wentz working with Rager and Djax and JJ Hightower, Goodwin, who's new.
Right.
Yeah, and this is a lot, man. I'll tell you what. I didn't quite realize how detailed this thing is.
I'll give you a sneaky little area too,
Uh-oh.
because we talk about it a lot, but it almost makes you almost forget about it. But how about the new ideas that Doug wants to bring to the offense, whether it's a lot of misdirection or pre-snap motion from Scangarello or whatever Andrew Briner and Marty Mortingweg are going to add? Some of that stuff you want the basics out of the way in OTAs so you can hit that in training camp, but they may not be able to get all of that stuff going right away. Yeah, sure, by the middle of the year, but you'd like to have by your opener some new things implemented into the playbook, and they just may not be able to get to it.
I agree.
The second level to that, though, Adam, is that despite all that, in my opinion, the Eagles are in way better shape than the other three teams in their division because the Giants have a new head coach. The Washington Redskins have a new head coach. Dallas has a new head coach. And with that, for two of those teams, at least the Giants and Washington, you have a whole slew of new coordinators and position coaches.
And schemes. Yeah,
and schemes. Now, Dallas is interesting because one person told me that what is going to save Dallas's season is that they kept Kellen Clemens as their
Kellen Moore.
I'm sorry, I always make that mistake. Kellen Moore as their offensive coordinator. So Dak and Ezekiel Elliott and Amari, that's actually pretty key. That'll help the Dallas Cowboys. So that was a smart move. Maybe he didn't do it on purpose.
They're going to defense, right? And defensively, Mike Nolan runs a multiple front. So that's going to be different for them. And the Giants, I'm told, are going to keep the 34. Washington is going to, I believe, keep the 34, but they're going to have a new offense with Scott Turner. So, yeah, it's a great point. So there's some changes here, and the Eagles definitely have that advantage with the coaches.
All right, Dimitri chimes in. With the signing of Hargrave, do the Eagles see Malik as the third DT, or do you see them using him more outside, especially with the way Ridgeway came along? I feel if he plays outside, it shows us their lack of confidence in the edge rushers, Sweat, Oseman, and Miller.
Yeah, I would say this. I do believe that Jackson will play mostly inside. The Jaguars used him a little bit on the outside. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially though, Dimitri, if they don't sign a veteran DN, I could see him getting 5 to 10 snaps per game on the outside. It just depends. Coaches always tell me they love to get their best in terms of their front four, their best 4 players on the field. Well, I don't know that Barnett is, Geoff, quite a guy you could depend on. Yeah, he's a starter, but he hasn't played at the level that they're expecting him to yet. He still has a chance to do it. He's still under contract. But and Jannard Avery obviously is a guy they want to look at.
Yeah. So it's funny because Malik Jackson last year, if I keep saying go back and check, but I'm almost positive he only played in the season opener. That's when he got hurt. I think he took a few reps on the outside in some creative packages. Right. Okay. So and interestingly, he recently did an interview. He went on with our friends at 97.3 ESPN, and he said he's not a big fan of playing outside in a 4-3 front. He said he'd rather be in a rotation in the middle than even play too many snaps on the outside.
Well, he's going to be obviously in a rotation. Oh, by the way, in that interview, there was a good interview with Mike Gill. He did say he just had started running. He got fitted for shoes. I guess he was starting. That interview was from April. So think about it. October, November, December, January, February, March, April. 7 months. That's how long it takes to start getting ready to run. That's why it's a 9 to 12 month injury, folks. It's just the Liz Frank injury, which Deuce Staley had. Yeah, it's the first one I never even heard of it before when John Clayton reported in 2000, I think it was.
Right.
So it's sort of a common injury now. Not a lot of them, but it does happen. Every year guys have this injury.
So one thing that's interesting, though, Adam, is because they're so strong at defensive tackle and because they only usually, in their pass rush, it's 4 linemen, right? In the past, they've been very willing to have 3 DNs and 1 D tackle in their NASCAR package. They move Brandon Graham inside or Michael Bennett inside.
Probably not going to do it anymore.
And bring Chris Long out.
Or very little, yeah.
So now, theoretically, if everybody stays healthy at D tackle, you're probably going to have 2 defensive tackles on the field even for the pass rush. And that really just leaves Barnett and Graham as your main outside weapons, provided that they're healthy and playing well. So we talk a lot about whether Vinny Curry's coming back or can Josh Sweat step up or Sharif Miller or Jannard Avery. But the reality is, at least to start, I think as long as the interior rushers are healthy, there's really only going to be 2 defensive ends on the field. for the pass rush.
Yeah, nickel. I don't see the role where they move Graham inside anymore. This is what Jim Schwartz wanted last year. He felt like that he wanted to get away from that and just use Malik Jackson and nickel. And then Ridgeway, obviously, who was really surprised from there for that trade. So now they're so deep at D tackle. They've got so much versatility there. This has a chance to be one of the best D lines they've put together in years.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does, it minimizes Derek Barnett in terms of him having to play well. And plus, they do have Jannard Avery. If Barnett does not play well, they could give Avery a little bit more of a look. Right. Josh Sweat, they know who he is. So that's kind of what the D line looks like.
By the way, I like how Hunter tried to get out of a difficult pronunciation by just saying Dimitri. Went with that question. You didn't want to get into Boreanatis, I believe is how it's pronounced.
Yeah, that's right.
Touche. You're going to really do that to me, huh? You're going to do that to me. You're going to throw me under the bus.
You're getting
like
your Ricky hazing.
Unbelievable. Yeah, you know what? If I think I'm going to struggle, I'll just go first name. I think that's better.
There you
Smart
go.
Play.
But Colin Morrissey hits us with a two-parter. Most people continue to pencil Greg Ward on the roster. Do you guys see a situation where the Eagles keep both Quez Watkins and John Hightower on the roster and leave him off? Also, if the Eagles decide to keep Ward and Goodwin on the roster, is there a possibility that they actually keep 7 wideouts?
I got him for 6. Yeah, I think Ward, I don't want to say a lock because there's no guarantee money in his contract. He's just a great story, guy you want to have around. They blew it with him last year, Geoff. I don't know what. I've checked into this. I can't get a straight answer. I know that certain people wanted him to play earlier, and it might have been the receiver coach's fault. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is he should have been on the field. That was bad. But they got lucky. Look, they kept cutting him, and he kept coming back. And great story of perseverance. What really a great – I'll tell you what. This is good. This is a stretch. But I don't know if they make the playoffs without him, Geoff. Who the hell can make a play?
I agree with you.
Who the hell can make a play for them?
Who would have played? Yeah, especially that position, right? That slot position where he really excelled.
He was a security blanket. It was like the 2 tight ends and Ward. That was it. I mean, they had nobody. Greg Ward will be on the football team. He again, they're going to be a 12 personnel team. He might not see a ton of playing time if everybody's healthy. Now, if Jalen Reagor struggles, I know I'm a little bit more bullish on him than most people. But if you don't know what he's doing, they got a problem, Geoff. What it means Marquise Goodwin's going to be on the field a lot, and Greg Ward probably. Greg Ward's not an outside player. He's a slot. He's a Y slot. That's what he is. He's not an outside player.
Which, by the way, that helps him make this team. I mean, I don't think Greg Ward's not going to make the team because other than Jalen Reagor, who could play in the slot, but they want also for the outside, who would be their natural slot in 11 personnel right now?
Oh, so Ward for sure. Yeah,
right.
Ward, correct. I agree.
And I don't see them keeping 7 receivers with the amount of 12 personnel that they play. It just doesn't make sense.
I don't see Watkins.
They're not even playing that many receivers. Yeah.
What I would tell you to add that, and coaches always tell me this, you got to be careful when you say this guy won't make the team. He goes, players play themselves often on the roster. Always.
True. Always.
And there are mistakes made. The LJ Fort situation we've outlined for about 50 times on our show. I'm sick and tired of talking about that guy.
Yeah.
But if he shocks the world, you got to keep him on the roster. That's your job as an evaluator. Look, Howie Roseman. I remember Corey Clement. Corey Clement beat out 4 running backs for a roster spot. I didn't think he was going to make the roster. When they signed him after the draft, but the Eagles obviously knew, so they really liked the player. And to Howie Roseman's credit, he tells agents it's real simple. It's my call. If the guy earns a roster spot, he's on the roster. I don't care what these guys are being paid, and to his word, Corey made it.
There you go. All right, we've got a couple more questions left. Before we do that, I want to stop right now and let everybody know about our friends at PHLSportsNation.com doing an excellent job of enhancing the fan experience, covering the Eagles, the Sixers, the Flyers, the Phillies, and lo and behold, some of those teams are coming back soon. We knock on wood and hope it all works. So make sure you're checking out PHLSportsNation.com. Got a great bunch of podcasts as well. For the fans, by the fans, that's their motto. So make sure you kind of peruse the website and pick and choose what you like to read and see out of there. We thank them for their partnership. And also, now's the time to pause for a word from our great sponsors. All right, back to the questions, Hunter.
All right.
Cue it up.
Kyle Cipher asks, what are your biggest fears that could derail the season?
Outside of injuries? I mean, injuries are
Yeah, you
always...
can take it any way you want. Yeah, take it. Yeah, I would say injuries, obviously. If here you go. I'm not going to rank them, but I did say Rager. If Rager's not ready, they got a problem. That means that Goodwin's going to have to play. He can never depend on him with his injury history. That would be a problem. Obviously, if Carson Wentz got hurt for more than like 4 games, we don't know about Nate Sudfeld, the guy that they've always been high on, but wasn't quite as good last year. Right. He's a lot of ability, but you don't like that he's never started an NFL game. Wait, the Dallas game. Did he start that Dallas game 3 years ago in 17?
No, he did not.
Okay, he just came in off the bench. I think maybe Foles did.
Yeah, Foles played like a series.
Okay, then Sudfeld came in. Yeah, good call. Go ahead.
And then he completed, I think, 80% of his passes.
He looked good.
It was unbelievable.
I said to Nate, I was like, dude, I didn't know you could run like that, man. But go ahead.
80% of his passes he ran, but he put, I think, 0 points on the board.
Frank Wright called that game, by the way. Just
oh
for the
my
record.
God, it was freezing. I'll give you an underrated kind of, I guess this might even be devil's advocate a little bit, but okay. I'm always, look, the reality is every year, someone you think is going to play well just doesn't play well, and they fall off the face of the earth, and you wonder why, right? Darius Slay is the big ticket guy.
Yes, if he gets
29,
hurt,
he's made 3 straight Pro Bowls. So I'm not going to sit here and say he's an ascending player. He's a very good player, but at some point he's going to be a descending player. And if he's not what he's supposed to be, or even if he gets hurt, then you're back to having Avonte Maddox on the outside, or maybe Sidney Jones, small guys or guys who haven't played well. You've got Nickel Roby-Coleman in the slot. He's only 5'8". You become a way different cornerback group when you lose Darius Slay. Or
Mills
might at the level expected to play.
Right, and then Mills might have to go play on the outside, which is what they want to avoid because he didn't run well enough. There's no way to rank them, but we just kind of outline all the problems they could have. They just don't have a good enough depth at outside corner. It's just that's the area where, and I know the Eagles want to take a look at Maddox on the outside and Sidney Jones, give him one more chance. Maybe Trevor Williams could be a surprise. They need you know what they could use though? They could use a good story, someone who they're not counting on to, like Jannard Avery. Yeah, he's going to get a chance, but let's say he shocks you in a 10 to 15 snap role where he gets 7 sacks for the season. Like that would really help. Or Trevor Williams making us their 4th corner, beats out Rasul Douglas. So those kind of things that would help them, where they don't quite know. Or Sharif Miller shocks us. We didn't really talk about him. If he physically is ready, and he starts to look like the guy that they thought, like those kind of things need to happen when you're not quite sure about your depth at certain positions.
All right, what do you say we get 2 more questions in?
All right.
Okay, this is from Fahad Zahir. There has been a lot of talking about signing a veteran running back to back up Sanders. I am more concerned about our lack of depth-proven players at the cornerback position. As you both have mentioned, they are one Slay injury away from possibly the worst secondary in the league.
Not that bad.
Well, maybe.
Well, corner, it's not good. Okay,
pretty bad last year.
Yeah, all right. You won that argument. Sorry.
Well, he goes on to say the new DB coach helps, but then again, how much time will he have this offseason with them?
Great point.
His main question is, any chance they are looking to bring in a veteran corner to compete for cornerback 2 or to provide some depth?
We're gonna have a news and notes show for Monday morning show, and we're gonna find out. That's a great question.
It is.
I have like 10 questions to get answered. Some we haven't really talked about. It's just contractually related about certain contracts I have a question on, but we need to find out. That's a great question because Geoff and I just talked about it. Disaster. If Slay gets hurt, they've sunk our battleship. Remember that growing up? You sunk my battleship.
I do.
That's a real problem. If Slay gets hurt, because Sidney Jones hasn't shown anything yet, Geoff.
Right. And it becomes kind of a twofold problem, Adam, because it goes beyond the cornerback group, because now you look at your safety group, and again, that's not a very, outside of Rodney McLeod, you've got Jalen Mills transitioning to a hybrid spot. You have Will Parks, who has good upside, but will be his first year in this defense. And Kevon Wallace is a rookie. Do you know who their other safeties are? Yeah, nobody else does either. I mean, they're not deep at safety, right? And all it would take would be one injury or one guy just not playing into his potential at that position too. And I agree with what Fahid, is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, I agree with what he said about the potential of this secondary being disastrous if Darius Slay were to get hurt.
Yeah. I agree. So that's kind of the nutshell. They've got some challenges. This team's better than last year in terms of talent, but they have so many new faces, new coaches. You just got to see without getting the players on the field in the offseason how this is all going to mesh, man. This is I'm so glad, Geoff, at the top of the show that you discussed this. You brought up the stuff that you had heard.
Yeah,
there are way more challenges than I thought with this team. I didn't quite realize how many things are going on here. How many
there are,
parts.
but to be fair, I mean, every single team is going to face this same issue. So
no, but they have a lot of new players, new coaches, moving parts.
Yeah,
things that they like to do on defense, which we outline on the defensive coaches show.
Right.
So yeah, a lot going on.
All right, our last question. David has a very unique one, but I'm going to reword it a bit. So essentially, if you had to choose two guys who haven't made a Pro Bowl or All-Pro team yet, who can you see playing at that type of level?
Eagles, who? Geoff? Anyone come to mind?
Playing at who? Well,
not Nate Gary. No, I'm just kidding.
We are both high on, and it's going to be difficult because he's always going to be the number 2, but we are both high on Dallas Goedert. Can they be so prolific with their 2 tight end offense that Goddard and Ertz could both make the Pro Bowl?
No.
Probably not.
No, I can't see that.
No. Oh, man, this is a tough one. Do you think?
Wait, this question, could you
Read that again?
Yeah.
Just so I understand.
If you had to choose two guys who have not made a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro team yet, who can you see playing at that type of level?
It's weird. The Eagles are so top heavy.
I got it.
And then you already got it, huh?
Javon Hargrave.
That was the name that was in my head.
Okay, that would be one.
Javon would be a good one. How about this? Has Brandon Graham made a Pro Bowl?
I don't think so. Unless and again, when you say that, he might have been in as an alternate or replacement, but just voted in. I don't think so. Could be wrong.
I think there's always a chance. I mean, Brandon's always on the precipice. He's always 8 to 9, 9.5 sacks,
solid.
never 10.
Solid.
Yeah. But I could see that happening.
I will say this.
Is interesting.
Yeah, I will say this. Miles Sanders is going to have a huge year. It would not shock me if he winds up being a Pro Bowler. I know there are a lot of great running backs in the NFC.
That's a great one. Yeah,
it's
that is
probably not going to happen because when you really look at McCaffrey, okay, McCaffrey, Zeke Elliott, Barkley, his former teammate and good buddy, who's now with the Giants. The Dalvin Cook, the Kamara. It's just not going to happen. It's just not. It's not.
That would be my. Now that you say
it would be hard. It would be hard.
It's going to be hard because he's a running back, and there are just so many more prolific ones. But he's got a shot. Graham, I like. But if it's going to be someone to make All-Pro, Adam, how about Zach Ertz? I mean, he's always among the top 3 at his position
for sure.
And some people feel he's been snubbed from that award in the
Slay.
past. I mean, possibly Slay. I mean, Slay's going to get be under the spotlight so much this year. It's going to be hard.
I can't wait to see this guy.
Good, it's going to be hard for him to be All-Pro, but we'll see.
Wentz. Wentz absolutely has a chance.
Oh, that's a good point too.
Yeah, he has. But this is a great question. It's a very unique one we've never been asked before. So it was really good questions, man. I said it from day one. It was pretty obvious our fans are really smart.
Yeah, and
this is why we do these shows because it helps people learn. And then what happens is some of these questions are so good. I'm like, wow, that's actually a great question. I need to find that one out.
It's amazing that we can't pick 3 players on the offensive line because they've all been at least Pro Bowl.
Good.
All-Pro.
Yeah,
all 3 of them have made Pro Bowl and All-Pro.
Say Malo, Isaac is in that really. He's just a good football player. I don't think he'll ever be a Pro Bowler.
No,
but people don't understand.
Too many ups and downs.
Yeah, his 16 and 17, Geoff. People just don't understand. It was to the point where some people with Eagles really. They were not sure if he'd ever make it. And his 18 offseason, it was one of our first shows we ever did. I said, this guy's going to be a breakout player. People think I'm crazy, but I'm just telling you, he's going to be starting. And they feel like he's turned the corner. And Jeff Stoutland, to leave you folks with something, Jeff Stoutland's word means more than anything in their building in terms of their coaches.
Very much so.
So it just what he says, he's rarely wrong. And that means a lot.
All right, that's going to wrap it up. That'll do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. Thanks to our friends at 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you download their free mobile app, and you can hear us do our Football at 4 segment every Monday through Friday at 4 o'clock. Want to thank our producer. You heard him tonight, Hunter Brody. You can also check out his work on YouTube, Sports Talk with Broads. Check out his podcast that he does with former Villanova basketball star Daryl Reynolds called Processed. And check him out on Twitter, @Broads81. Also, if you love baseball, you can hear me, Hunter, and Frank Close doing the Powder Blue podcast, which is available on every major podcast platform. And maybe, hopefully, we'll get baseball back this year. We'll see what develops out of that. Make sure you're checking out the Inside the Birds YouTube page, InsideTheBirds.com. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.